Let's bring him in. Jeff Paterson.
So we're no Canucks with J-Pat the whole time.
No,
Canucks.
we'll talk Canucks. Okay. And Jeff Paterson's
here. What kind of intro was that? What are we talking about then?
Whatever, I'll do the ad read.
Well,
later.
We've been doing a lot of Frozen Frenzy talk here, Jeff. We'll start there. What are your thoughts?
Can you feel the energy? Look, I'm all for it. The NHL's trying something a little different. They're not going up against Monday Night Football. The bulk of the NBA schedule starts tomorrow. I think they saw this as an early season date on the schedule that they could do something like this. But it's sort of typical ESPN and NHL fashion. You roll out all these games. You start at 3:00 Pacific time, but you also have the Flyers, an Eastern-based team, starting at 8:00 in Vegas. Like, welcome to the Frozen Frenzy there, Philadelphia fans. Wake up tomorrow morning and find out how your team did. Like, I don't know. That just feels to me like, there's always an Eastern team out west and a Western team out east. And look, scheduling is nearly impossible. I totally admire the guys that, and I know that it's aided by computers these days, but you're always going to be lacking somewhere. And for the Canucks to get a 6:15 Pacific time start to 8:15 in Nashville. So it's fairly late. I mean, NHL games generally don't start after 8:00 local time. And yet you look at this road trip, the Oilers home opener was 8:00 local in Edmonton, but it was the home opener with festivities. And I looked it up on the score sheet. It didn't start till 8:18. And then there was the baseball playoffs in Philly. And so they had to bump that one up. It was a 6:00 start. So, they've seen a few unique start times along the way, but it's the same for both teams. You just got to be ready. And for the Vancouver Canucks, a chance to come on home after a really successful road trip if they can get the victory tonight at Bridgestone Arena.
Somebody brought up, I got to get to this. We have the best listeners. I know every show says that, but we do. Antagonist in the chat says NBA also starts today as well. That's going to take away a lot of people that are just sports fans. They're going to choose the NBA opener over this Frozen. I don't even know what it's called. Frozen Frenzy? Frozen 40 games? Whatever it is.
Frozen 4.
Jeff, what we're worried about is the Vancouver Canucks. That's what we said we're going to talk about. Nashville Predators tonight. You brought it up, 6:15. Biggest note for me going into this game, and something you and I spent a decent amount of time on rink-wide talking about, at least definitely touched on it, was Niels Höglander. Looks like he's going to get back into the lineup tonight. I was telling you on rink-wide this past weekend that I thought he's been great this season. I think he's starting to learn a little bit more from the coaching staff. I think he's starting to figure out what kind of role he needs to play. I felt like he was gaining some momentum. Then he was sad on Saturday night. He's going to get back in the lineup tonight. What are your thoughts on Niels getting back into the lineup tonight for the Canucks and what you've seen from him this year?
Yeah, I honestly, I think great is a little, it's a stretch. You're using that word liberally, but he's had his moments, but this is a guy that started training camp on the top line and progressively worked his way down to the point where on the final night of the preseason looked like a dress rehearsal and he wasn't even in the lineup. So, some things clearly happened from the start of camp to the end of the preseason that didn't allow him to maintain his spot up higher in the lineup. But, I think that they've got a few players, and Studnicka is one of them, and it looks like he comes out and Höglander gets his opportunity. You get your chance, do something. You ever heard those two words put together? And I think for Höglander, he does. Like, it's not enough just to get back in the lineup and think, all right, I'm in. This is good. It is good, but he has to make the most of that opportunity. So be ferocious. Be on the forecheck. Don't sit back. Talked a lot after their practice on Sunday. They had a full team day off yesterday, but I thought it was really interesting. And if you listen to Rick talking, there's almost always a nugget or two in his availabilities. And after the practice on Sunday, and I know that lots of people, they're full up on the NFL on Sundays and maybe not paying attention to a Canuck practice in Nashville, and talked about the fact that he felt only half his team was getting what he was trying to preach defensively, which I thought was pretty alarming when they're 3-2. They've had a camp and a preseason of 5 games, and he says only half the guys. Maybe that's an oversell. He didn't name names, but he talked about the fact that way too many guys are backing up through the neutral zone, allowing opponents to come at them. And he wants guys, and I think he's talking about his forwards here, although some of the defensemen, Tyler Myers, maybe you got to be careful because if he hears charge forward, he's going to take off like he shot out of a cannon. But I think he's always talking about meeting pressure with pressure. And I think he wants his forwards, instead of, backing up and basically rolling out a welcome mat into the offensive zone, he wants them to pressure in the neutral zone, try and break up plays, be disruptive, and those types of things. And so, that's what I'm looking for from Niels Höglander. If he can provide offense, great, but it's always been his play away from the puck. And we heard that Travis Green talked about from the top of the circles down in the offensive zone. Bruce Boudreau, clearly there was a disconnect, and now onto his third NHL coach. So, he sat and watched the other night. That had to be a bit of a message. And Teddy Bluger's coming back. And so that's going to complicate matters here until they can facilitate some sort of Connor Garland trade. I think you're going to see a revolving cast of characters. Is it going to get to that for Anthony Beauvillier early in the season that he may come out? Like, there's another guy that he's got to find a way to contribute more than he has to this point. It's gone a little quiet for Dakota Joshua, although I don't think that he's likely to come out of the lineup, although maybe if Tocchet's trying to send messages. But Höglander gets in there tonight. I hope he makes the most of it because I do want to see it. I want to see him succeed. I believe there's a player there, but it's not enough just to say, hey, you're back in tonight. You're going to be in for the rest of the season. That's not the way it works. So I do think there's a little bit of pressure on him to perform. And again, that doesn't mean lighten it up on the score sheet. If that happens, great. But you have to notice them at the very least.
I think I look at the bottom six and I think Höglander's there to be a guy who can replace a top six player if you're making an in-game adjustment. I think that's the difference between him and Jack Studnicka as well. So I think that's something that I'm curious to see what happens. Are they happy with how the top six is running? If you're looking for a spark, like how often have we said spark and Höglander in the same sentence over the last couple of years, right? So I look at that as maybe looking to see why he's getting back in the lineup and something that he can bring that maybe Jack Studnicka can't. But you bring up a great point. When Teddy Bluger comes back, who's coming out, right? Like, who's coming out? Is it going to be the guy who has some more things aside from 5-on-5 and being able to contribute on a line? Like, is Dakota Joshua a guy that you can take off your penalty kill and it's not going to affect you that much? Like, maybe he's been solid on the penalty kill, I think, to this point in the season, but it's not like he's a top four. You can't take him out of the lineup. I think that's going to be a spot for Höglander is, yes, you're in the fourth line role. You got to play that role correct, but he can also be that spark up in the lineup. And I just don't really see that. Like, I think there's a reason Anthony Beauvillier is down on the fourth line, right? I think that reason is he hasn't been able to provide that spark higher up in the lineup. So that's what I'd like to see from Höglander here moving forward.
Yeah, and I think, to your point, like, it's easy to look at the stats column and say, oh, there's nothing there for Beauvillier and it hasn't happened for P.S. Suter. But I mean, you're right. To be a team and an effective team, guys have roles. And so Dakota Joshua, part of his role is supposed to be physical, get in on the forecheck. We've seen Phil DiGiuseppe do that to a T. You want to believe that a guy like Joshua would be inspired by that. But if it's not happening for him offensively, he is part of the penalty kill. Now, Teddy Bluger comes back. Obviously, he's going to be part of the penalty kill. And so, if I'm Dakota Joshua, I'm not taking anything for granted because I do think there's more to give there. And you don't want him falling into any sort of complacency. He certainly hasn't earned the benefit of the doubt just in terms of, the longevity of his career. So I think there's more for a lot of those guys in the bottom six. And with Teddy Bluger possibly coming back as early as Friday, we really haven't had an update with them out on the road. I would think a lot of those guys would want to use that as an impetus just to, be a little more pronounced in their performance here tonight against Nashville.
What'd you make of Ilya Mikheyev in your limited viewings, obviously, so far, but also Andrei Kuzmenko and how that kind of relates to each other?
I like the way they handled Mikheyev, and that was 13 minutes of ice time. It's been 9 months, and you're coming off knee surgery, and yes, there have been some practices, and they've ramped it up, but he hadn't had any game action. There was no need to test him and push him to his limits. So I think this is sort of like breaking in a racehorse a little bit, and that's what he's got to be for this team. There were some spurts and bursts where you saw the speed. I don't think it's all the way back yet, but talk about putting a guy in a position to succeed on that line with Paterson and Kuzmenko. And I don't think it was a coincidence that Andrei Kuzmenko sort of arrived really for the first time this season. I know he scored in Edmonton, but he had some jump to his game, and I think some of that was getting his buddy and his countrymen back, and he scores the game winner, and that was terrific. The wheeling, spinning assist on the Paterson goal was great too. But it's more than that. When you're talking about Kuzmenko, we know that the offense is there, but he stands his ground in the blue paint, and OEL has to put the stick on him, takes a penalty, and that led to the Carson Soucy goal. And so, those are some of those little things sometimes that go unnoticed, certainly not by the coaching staff, but you want Kuzmenko to battle for his ice and to get to the front of the net and try and, be a problem so that defensemen are going to hook and hold and put a glove on him and those types of things. So, I like that line again. And we talked about this on Rink Wide. Like Elias Pettersson, 2 points a game. He's, up near the top of the scoring lead. And it just doesn't feel like we have seen anything close to his A game yet. And so that just speaks to how supremely talented he is, that the points follow him around, even if he's not at his very best. There's going to be nights where he is an absolute game breaker and game changer. I don't know that he's had to be that yet. And I know he had 4 on opening night. So, I'm aware of that. But even at that, Boeser was the star of that show, and there were some others. Petey will get there. And, I look forward to those nights. But I just like the fact that this guy's finding a way to contribute, to put up points even if he's not at his best and if he's being hobbled, whether it was the shot that he took off the leg in Philadelphia or if it's remnants of the flu that cost him that week in the preseason. Again, we all know that there is more to give from Elias Pettersson, and it'll be there soon. But even without his very, very good stuff, he's still having an impact on these hockey games, and the Canucks have won more than they've lost.
A guy who's been given the good stuff. You talked about him in your ponderings on Paterson's Point weekly at Canucks
You're really
Army.
liking that.
I love
you
it.
like the ponderings,
and I'm never going to give it up. That's the thing. Jeff knows that. In Paterson's Point this week, you highlighted Brock Boeser. Just talk about that a little bit for the listeners.
Yeah, like I think a lot of people in this market are pulling for Brock, but I think he also had lost some of the benefit of the doubt that maybe he wasn't the player that everybody hoped he was going to be after those first 2 seasons with 29 and 26 goals. And he had morphed into more of a playmaker and try to, board battles. But last year with Horvat as the ace on the power play, he was kind of the odd man out. And so there were some questions coming back this season. I mean, we all know that it's going to be tough to get value out of his contract, but he can be a useful player. Not expecting 4 goals a night. I mean, that was incredible on opening night. But I like the fact that since opening night, he hasn't disappeared and hasn't gone quiet. And that's kind of been a knock on him in past seasons. And same with Connor Garland, that, it's not enough to score and then go 10, 12, 15 games without doing it again. And so for Boeser to score in Tampa with, that kind of goal scorers mentality, and then to back it up, I know it was an empty netter, but the fact that he's out late in the game, preserving and protecting a lead, that says something about him and that line that he's on. And so, it was just that line that when he came back to training camp and he said, I'm sort of at peace. I'm at peace with my father's passing. I've said my piece about wanting to be in Vancouver when he's been dogged by the trade talk and everything else. And so it's just struck me in these first 5 games, he looks like a guy that's at peace, and he's able to sort of be, free up in his mind and just go out and play. And the results are what the results are. He's got 6 goals. He didn't have 6 goals at Christmas last year, which is pretty mind-boggling, really, when you think about it. But that just underscores the struggles. And we all know about nearly being a healthy scratch in early December last year in that game against Arizona. And here he is. He's not coming out of the lineup anytime soon, the way that he's going. And on that line, Dave, your PB&J line, they're absolutely the most consistent line for the Vancouver Canucks for the first 5 games of the season.
We're going to get to our poll question in a second here, but I want to get your opinion, Jeff. Individual player goal songs, yes or no? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I've made it evidently clear over my years. Music's not a huge thing for me. Like, I don't even hear it at the rink. Like, I know it plays, but it's like in one ear and out the other between between whistles and all that. Like, it just doesn't matter to me. So I do not care. Mark me down. If I can vote twice, I will. Yeah, it's just not one of those things. I know that
you can vote I'm angry.
Yeah,
that's
I'm angry.
You are I'm angry. You're the 2%.
I remember when Brandon Sutter was here and he had I think it was the Tim McGraw song, and that was I'm not a music guy, but I'm certainly not a country music guy. So that one always stuck out for the wrong reasons for me, but he seemed to enjoy it. We didn't hear it that often, obviously, because he didn't score a ton of goals. He did have a hat trick though in that no fans in the stands season against Ottawa. So no, I just and you're never going to get universal appeal and consensus on this with the fan base, but I'm just like, find a song that works and stick with it. And then you hope that you hear it a whole lot, an awful lot over the course of the season.
They had it. I thought they had it in Holiday, but anyways.
Alex DeBrincat right now with the Eminem song where it's like na 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 na, because that's something that I kind of like the players one.
Can you
we'll
sing
touch
more
on
of the song?
No, I'm with you there. Like, if you can find a song that has a hook that the crowd can get into, like that. Talking. Yeah, like that seems to be something that the Canucks should look at.
Yeah. All right. Final one here, Jeff. We're gonna get to our Greta read in a second. Greta Bar, the good folks there. We had the party down there, so I'm setting you up here, Jeff.
Okay.
7 hours at the rink. You've been there all day. You get to go to a bar. You get to sit down with a beer. You get one appetizer. What's your go-to appetizer at a bar?
Probably nachos if they're done properly. A little picky in particular when it comes to that. I've had enough over the years as my expanding waistline.
Oh, you got nothing, Jeff.
But yeah, if you could guarantee me that they were like sort of B grade and above nachos, then I'm all over that, and like hands off, leave the plate to me. I just want all myself. Potato skins are sort of an underrated But again, they can be like the mushy middle, and they can be really disappointing. And you don't, I just, if I'm all in for potato skins and they come and then like they're soggy, like it's just so deflating. So I'm going nachos.
So I was telling you about the Canucks Army party that we had last week or a couple weekends ago here, and the $2 hot dogs. That's all we talked about. We didn't talk enough about the nachos. The Canucks Army nachos were getting great reviews at the party. So we're gonna have to get you back there, Jeff, and we'll see if the nachos live up to your B+ rating or not.
I'm sure they do.
They absolutely do. And it's the guacamole.
Oh,
the good guacamole in my eyes is like the creamier one, more of a sauce than an actual kind of salsa type of thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like the
yeah,
creamier guacamole. They had that at Greta. Good stuff there. Jeff, good stuff from you as per usual. We'll chat with you next Tuesday, and we'll make you tell us about what you're going to have at a bar again next week.
All right, guys, enjoy the game tonight, and make sure you feel that frenzy.
Oh, yeah. We're frozen about it. That's for sure.